Another edition of the Etihad Cargo Connections. I'm AP, pleased to be joined by another fantastic horseman, Peter Kean, co-owner of Nature Strip. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Great to be here, and good afternoon from New Zealand.
You bet. We'll get into your story and we'll talk a lot of things about Nature Strip, but there's so many ways to measure things in life, and one of them objectively is career earnings for a horse. And if Nature Strip repeats in the Everest and wins, you're going to be knocking on Winx's door, all-time top earning horse in Australia. Try to put that in perspective in terms of performance and revenue generated.
I suppose, well, it's first of all, it would be a fantastic achievement, and we would be over the moon. I mean, we've had so much good times with this horse, but the earnings keep coming. It's hard, I suppose, when you go back in history. It's like comparing teams to different decades or different times. But certainly Nature Strip, we'd like to think, would be regarded as one of the best horses to ever come out of Australia, certainly one of the best sprinters. So it means a lot, but so does the welfare of the horse to us, and very lightly raced and very well looked after by Chris Waller and our hoop, James McDonald. So no, it's awesome.
You mentioned those two fantastic gentlemen. Let's start with the guy who's on the horse, James McDonald. He's a heck of a jockey. What can you tell us about him off the horse, off the track? Who is he as a person?
Well, he's a busy man, James. He gets off before he rides a horse, he gives us a rundown, and when he gets off, he gives us a rundown. But he's normally busy and on his way to the next ride, because he's such a sought after hoop or jockey. And so he's a New Zealander. So he's also from over this part of the world, and he moved to Australia for more opportunities, and he's certainly taken them with both hands. And he just looks after Nature Strip so well, and they have a great affinity with each other. So yeah, James is just a great jockey, a great horseman, and a lovely bloke.
As I get to know more about the Australian culture and the Kiwi culture, it seems there's a rough parallel between Canadians coming to the States to make it and Kiwis going to Australia to make it in terms of opportunities for business and success, more population. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's very fair assessment. The guy that was best man at my wedding has lived in Canada for a long time, and I've been there a few times to visit him. And we often say that it's like when Canadians get mixed up with Americans, they're not that pleased, and when Kiwis get mixed up with Australians, we're not that pleased. But it's more humour than anything else. So we're brothers in arms, but we do take the mickey out of each other often. So totally understandable. But yeah, I also moved to Australia for about 4 years to further my career. So, and it's very close from New Zealand. It's less than 3 hours, and so we're over there very quickly to any of the races in Sydney or Melbourne. So fantastic.
You talked about Chris Waller, the trainer, earlier. Which of his qualities do you most admire, and why?
Patience. I think he just seems to have patience, and he tries to instill that into us as owners. Some of us are a bit more impetuous than what Chris is, but he's also another Kiwi, so another New Zealander who's gone over there to make his way and to improve his training abilities. And wow, what a job he's done. But he's a gentleman. That would be another way to describe Chris. Unflappable, but certainly underneath it, I would imagine that there's a lot of excitement going on, and he's probably like a swan gliding along the lake, but the feet will be going pretty quick underneath. But yeah, we're very lucky to have those two guys that work so well together, and they speak very highly of each other.
Etihad Cargo Connections. I'm AP Harold. He's Peter Kean, co-owner of Nature Strip. This is a horse that hasn't finished outside of the top three since the 2020 Everest. Who would you consider his top rivals in the 2022 Everest?
Well, we've had great battles with Eduardo. There's a horse that I thought lost and running, finished off really well the other day in the shorts. Mars Crusader, always a danger. And then there's some young ones, and we've also got Joyful Fortune, who I just learnt about, I think yesterday, or even though it was yesterday, I think that he's coming over from Hong Kong, and he's by Nakoni as well, which is Nature Strip's father. So they're half brothers. So he's 3, I understand. Nature Strip's 8. So I hope Nature Strip tells the young brother just to wait his time. Wait a couple of years till I've retired, lad.
And I guess, Peter, too, in horse racing, we never know over here in the States, in the Kentucky Derby, Rich Strike wasn't even one of the original 20 horses. There was a late scratch. The horse got in and the ultimate long shot won. So I get, at the end of the day, you've got to worry about yourself, your own horse, and I guess let the dirt fly. Is that fair?
That's 100% fair. And I think Chris often says that we just need to leave it to J-Mac and to Nature Strip, and they have that affinity, as I referred to earlier. Clearly, the draw in the Everest is a factor for all horses, not just for us. And also, I guess the pace the races run at can be dictated by some of the real sprinters there. But it's even though it's only 1,200 or 6 furlongs, it's still, there's a lot of stamina required, because there's all sorts of sectionals in the race where you have to just keep pretty calm, but you've got to keep on the pace.
We always say that horses don't know if they've won a trophy or all this accolades. I guess we don't know if they know. We can't get inside their brains, but we certainly know. And Nature Strip recently, for the 2nd time, Australia Horse of the Year, 3rd time champion sprinter. What does this mean to you and the other owners?
Well, I suppose it's just it's great for us to see Nature Strip now regarded in such a way. He when you go back in his career, when he was a bit younger, he was a bit flighty, albeit he could win any race, but he could also lose any race in those days. And some of the punters and some of the Australian and New Zealand public got a bit annoyed with him because he'd go out $1.60 shot and get beaten, or $1.80 shot and get beaten. But his consistency seems to be shining through now, and I think it's just really nice to be able to say Nature Strip. Just lost you for a minute. Whatever, Nature Strip, regardless now, will be remembered as a champion, even if it didn't happen to do well in its next race or two. We've always got a champion now, and I think that's what it means to us more, is for the horse to get that recognition, and in history he will be thought of in that way.
Peter, you mentioned something that's so important in life, in sports, in relationships, is consistency. You can be the really, really good, but if you don't show up, people are just not going to be able to deal with you. In your previous life as a rugby administrator, I'm guessing you saw some athletes who were really, really good players, but not that consistent, and the guys that weren't quite as good but were more consistent were more valuable. How does that compare to horse racing?
Yeah, I've got an old saying where I think it's not just what you do, it's how you do it, and not just what you achieve, but how you achieve it. And so, to me, doing one without the other isn't sustainable. You can achieve a lot of goals by what you do for the short term, but it's how you do it that you'll be remembered for. And it is very much a mixture of on and off the field. And I mean, Chris Waller and James McDonald and Nature Strip, what we see of them, they're very similar off the track. And once they get on the track, they haven't changed. And they, I think that's that calmness and patience. And if you look at Nature Strip before the big races, he looks as though he's almost asleep in the stalls, but then he comes out and he's the boss.
Try to put into words, Peter, the excitement that is Everest Day at Randwick with the Spring Carnival, the young crowd, the big purses. It's a new race that's taken the country, if not the region, if not the world, by storm. Paint the picture for us.
Well, it's going to be difficult because I've never been to an Everest before.
Okay.
So let me explain. So the first 2019, well, actually he got asked to run on the Everest in 2018, but he ran a poor lead-up race, and we decided to scratch him that year, 2018. So he was given a slot, but we just didn't believe he was really ready or up to it. 2019, I was in Japan at the Rugby World Cup. I was on the All Black board then, the New Zealand Rugby board, so I was there doing my duty, but I also really enjoyed rugby. But my wife, Judy, went over to Sydney and joined some of the other owners for the Everest, and she said it's just something different, something out of this world, and she's really looking forward to going back. In 2020, New Zealand was locked down. We weren't able to travel, so we had a function at our bar in Auckland where we invited a whole lot of people. We all got dressed up and watched it on the TV. Great anticipation, and we ran seventh. We ran fourth in 2019, seventh in 2020, and then last year we were only allowed X number of people even in the house, one house, because of the COVID. So we just had a family function at home and got dressed up and got everything organised, and we watched it on the big screen at home. But so really this anticipation for this Everest is even stronger for me, because having seen it on TV, having heard about it from my wife, it's really exciting. And Patrick Harrison and Rod Lyons and myself are going over the other owners, or a couple of the other owners, for the draw, the barrier draw, which I think is on the Tuesday, and then there's a gala dinner on the Thursday and the race on the Saturday. So we're going to suck in all the atmosphere, and I'll be able to tell you more about it afterwards once I've witnessed it in person.
It sounds good. We'll have a follow-up with you. Peter, an 8-year-old horse running for his 4th time in the Everest, that in and of itself, even if you've never won the Everest, which he did last year, is an amazing accomplishment. A lot of horses that are 6 or 7, they're put out to stud or pasture. How long can Nature Strip keep doing this?
Well, I think one of the things I referred to earlier was that he is lightly raced, Nature Strip, and that's a Chris Waller bit of magic, that he knows when to spell him and when to bring him in and when he's at his peak. So because he's lightly raced, we believe, and Chris has said the same, that if everything keeps going according to plan, he will probably race for another year. So there may be another Everest in him, but of course, horses are like humans, they're fickle, anything can happen, but we just hope he stays safe and sound, and it could be another year in him. I mean, Eduardo's 9 and still racing terrific, so who knows? But I'd imagine 1 year would be a max.
And Peter, you said you've never been to the Everest. I'm not sure if you've been to Lexington, Kentucky, but Nature Strip's win at Royal Ascot earned him a guaranteed spot in the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series there in the home of bourbon and thoroughbreds and basketball of the college variety over here in the States. Are you excited about the horse going there, and will you be able to make that trip if it happens?
Well, if we can, we'll be there. I mean, we've decided we'll try and get to as many of his races now as possible, firstly because he's a champion and we love him, but secondly because we had probably 2.5 years where we weren't able to go and see him and we had to watch him on the television. But I don't think there's been any decision made yet about that race, but it would be another feather in his cap. And I know that there has been just thrown out from different people to say, you got to go, take him there. But again, that'll probably be down to Chris Waller, really. You've got to allow the coach or the trainer to be in charge, and you've just got to be there supporting and asking questions and seeking to understand. So I can't answer that question yet.
How has the incredible success of Nature Strip strengthened the bond between you and Rod Lyons, James McDonald, Chris Waller, and the other co-owners?
Well, I think there's they realise that we are a bit of humour. We don't take life too seriously. I've got an Irish passport. Rod's got an Irish background. Paddy Harrison's got an Irish background. So the Irish know how to take the mickey out of themselves. And right. Chris and James have got a great sense of humour as well. So I think how it's changed is probably initially everyone was pretty serious and tense because we had this horse that could be a champion one day and a chump the next. But Rod Lyons and Paddy Harrison and myself certainly know how to have a good time, and we also know how to take the mickey out of each other and don't take life too seriously. But yeah, and I think J Mac and Chris Waller have worked out that if we're not too serious about everything. Obviously, on race day, we get that blimmer nervous that you do get serious, but we've got to leave that to them because they're the masters. We're just the ones that hiss and roar and try to get them home.
I know that folks with Irish backgrounds have a great sense of humor, but also very competitive. What would it mean to the entire group, the owners, trainer, jockey, support staff, Everest play? Well,
I think one of the owners who's a dear friend of us all, who I watched the shorts with in Sydney only 2 weeks ago, Jack Van Duren, his health isn't great. And so the fact he was able to go to Royal Ascot with his wife and some of his family, and he'll be there at the Everest, and I think it just makes it even all more that special to win it. And I'll have pretty much all my family there, and as many of the owners will, and to be surrounded by family and friends, that's just about as much part of it, and the fun and the excitement. It would mean a lot. It would mean a lot, but as I've said to a lot of people, that if by chance he didn't happen to run to his best, we've still got to be just so pleased and so lucky to have a horse of Nature Strip's caliber.
Co-owner of Nature Strip is our guest. That's Peter Kean on the Etihad Cargo Connections. I'm AP Harold. Peter, let's delve into your background a little bit. Where were you born and where'd you grow up?
I've been in Dunedin, which is right down south in New Zealand, in the South Island. And we moved to Central Otago, which probably, if anyone from around the world knows New Zealand, Queenstown is pretty well known for its tourism and skiing. So a place about half an hour from down the road there. And I've been all different parts in New Zealand, South Island and North Island. Spent a lot of time in Auckland, spent 4 years in Melbourne, and even did a stint or two in Boston, in your part of it's a wee way from where you live. So, but that's it, a big family. I'm one of 6 kids. I was the youngest of 6, and grandparents who came over from Southern Ireland around Kilkenny. And my parents and their grandparents, one side were farmers, the other side were hoteliers. And my son's got pubs or hotels now in Auckland. I was in the liquor industry for 30 years with Lion Nathan. So and still involved in a distillery company that we're opening here on Saturday in the South Island. So yeah, and a brewery in Australia called Brick Lane. We pass on a lot of that beer to Mr. Waller and J Mac too, but don't know how much J Mac can drink because he's a little fella, but certainly the connections and all the other trainers and strappers get a lot of fun out of that.
Well, I'm going to talk to the Irish embassy, see if they can give you a medal. You're in the liquor business, your son owns a pub, and you spent some time in Boston. You've checked all the boxes. Tell us about the ownership dynamic. Who is the details guy? I think we know everybody keeps each other loose. Whose idea was the group? How does it function?
Well, Rod Lyons is the manager, and he tells me if I ever get interviewed and don't mention him, then I'm in big trouble, because he said that he's the glue. So he's the manager, so we'd have to say he's the detail guy, but Paddy Harrison and myself and Steve Hansen sometimes sweep up after him. But I think the group, so initially Paddy Harrison and Rod and Jack Van Duren and Greg Smith, they're all in the carpet game. And so they started the syndicate, and I was lucky enough to be invited in about all crumbs, it would be nearly 20 years ago, I suppose. And latterly we got Steve Hansen in, who's a good friend of especially of myself and Patrick latterly. So yeah, the dynamic is good. I think the main detail person is probably Chris Waller, really. But no, Rod's done a great job as our manager, and I know Paddy supports him, and I do where I can, and Steve puts his 5 bob worth in, and as do the others.
It's good the carpet guys brought some liquor guys in. Talking to the other trainers and owners throughout Australia, even some over in your way in New Zealand, it's clear how much respect everyone has for your horse. How does it feel for Nature Strip's connections to now be the hunted? Everybody has put a circle around Nature Strip, and they're coming after you.
Well, the way he's responded to that Nature Strip speaks for itself, because he was the hunted at Royal Ascot. He was the Antipodean coming over to take on all these European horses, and he fronted up. He even beat the Queen's horse, which was pretty special, and especially the way things have panned out there, sadly for her, but a great person, of course. But it is unusual to be the hunted. Often in any sport, it's better to be hunting than being the hunted, but we've just got to accept that. And again, I think Nature Strip knows that they're after him, and I think he's sometimes flexes his muscle and says, "Okay, we'll show you who's boss." And so long may that continue.
And finally, Peter, what advice do you have for folks considering putting together a racehorse ownership team, whether it's in your part of the world, Europe, Middle East? Asia over here in the States. What are some things people should think about before they jump into something like that?
Well, firstly, I think the part of the beauty and glory of owning any horse is to be able to share the fun times and the disappointments, and so do it with friends. Um, and I would say you probably wouldn't want any more than perhaps 6 or 8 in the syndicate. Appoint a manager and give them autonomy to run things, but support them, and don't get involved unless you can afford it, because remembering it's a hobby. Um, I'd say for 99% of owners, it's a hobby, and there might be a small percentage that do it as a job. But make sure you got some disposable money, and because the bills keep coming in, and not everyone's lucky enough to get a horse like Nature Strip that can pay the bills. Because prior to Nature Strip, I can tell you we tried, and tried again. So it doesn't always happen, and quite a few of the horses we've had haven't even made the races. So you've got to be prepared for failure, and you've got to accept the fact that the excitement and the wins and everything may not come immediately, but you'd be hoping that some stage they do.
Nature Strip paying the bills for himself and other horses in the stable. Thank you so much, Peter Kean, co-owner of Nature Strip. Wishing you all the best as you go for back-to-back Everest wins in a little less than a month.
Thanks very much. I enjoyed our chat and appreciate your support.
Peter, really, thank you so much. That was a great conversation and a lot of fun, sir.
Cool. Thanks very much. Thanks, AP.